You are a Mandalorian?
Yes. I've been questioned with returning this child to his people. I'm looking for the Jedi on this planet. Can you point them to me?
Yes. But I need you to help me with something first. There's a Rancor which has been attacking my village. Help me defeat the Rancor, and I will point you to the Jedi.
Yes. The Mandalorians are always ready to assist. The Rancor are now dead.
Thank you, Mando. To find the Jedi, go to the city of Bangkor.
Ah, okay. Oh, child, you're hungry. Let's go into this cantina. Excuse me, I'd like an order of Ronto roasters.
Of course, sir. Before I can place your order in the kitchen, you need to help me fight some pirates who rob our cantina every day first.
Seems like a fair trade.
Thank you, Mando. To find the Jedi, go ask for Bortuga in the market.
Ah, this is a lovely market. Child, let's see if we can find him. Excuse me, are you Bortuga?
I can tell you my name, but first, my mother-in-law is still living with my wife and I. If you help us get rid of her out of my house, I will tell you my name.
Seems right. All right, I've killed your mother-in-law. Where do I go?
Ask that Mon Calamari over there.
Mon Calamari. My name is Mando. I need a small piece of information. What job do I need to do for you to get it?
They said you were the best in the Parsec.
Welcome to
Parsec Passion.
a podcast about Disney Plus's The Mandalorian, the first live-action Star Wars show. My name's Bubba, and with me, as always, is somebody who doesn't know how to parallel park on a pier. It's Catfish. Catfish, how you doing?
Bubba, I cannot tell you. You know, a lot of people say that there's a real question, and we've talked about it, whether Mandalorian is fan service for Star Wars fans or whether they're trying to broaden it. I feel like increasingly the episodes in this seasons are fan service exclusively for me because they are proving all the things that I've been standing up for, that people have been fighting me with. I feel like this season they're like, we're going to prove Catfish right about all these things. So I'm doing magnificently. How about you, Bubba?
I'm doing great. If you're in a good mood, then I think we need to get to your ranking for Season 2, Episode 3. A.K.A. Chapter 11, The Heiress. Catfish, what is your ranking out of 10 for this third episode of Season 2?
Well, I'm going to give this 9.5, what we all know as is double S's.
Double S's?
Yes, side quest saps. And that, of course, is if, as we discussed, every time you need someone to tell you where the bathroom is, first you have to go on a very long, involved, and potentially deadly quest just to find out where the frick you can wee. Listen, this was a very, very exciting episode. I'm curious to hear what Matt had to say about the music. I thought the music was thrilling. I felt like there was just the right amount of outside world inclusion. Of course, there's a lot of things in here that go back. I don't know who any of the rest of these Mandalorians are, but I know that they have a deep connection to the rest of the Star Wars universe. But even not knowing, I thought it was fascinating. And as I said, they keep reinforcing all the quote-unquote controversial things that I've said. Twota, once again, we see is evil. We find out that in our big discussion of last year, that wearing the helmet is not the way unless you're one of the Mandalorians who's trying to remove the Thetans from your soul. Scientology joke.
No. Here we go.
Scientology joke. He's a Scientologist. And so it's not the way for the majority of Mandalorians, as I was posing last year. Also, once again, proving that Mando needs assistance from everybody in this. I feel like this episode, and we love our old friend, our loyal listener, Patman23.
Yes.
I feel like this entire episode was the writers siding with me in my disagreements with Patman23. This is a direct repudiation of Patman23's beliefs, this entire episode. And so because of all the excitement, because of involving the outside world, being on this cool planet, I thought this was phenomenal. And again, yes, it's a side quest, but at least it's a side quest that involves the larger world in a way that's fascinating. I thought this was an amazing episode of The Mandalorian. There was no doubt after I saw episode 10 last week that episode 10 was shortly going to drop out of the top 10 episodes of The Mandalorian. This iced it. Amazing episode. Bubba, what did you think?
Catfish, I also really enjoyed it. As crazy as it is, loyal listeners, I'm the weirdo. I still actually enjoyed episode 2's kind of thrills a bit more. But still, I'm going to give this 8 double D's out of 10.
Oh, double D's?
Yes. Well, that is when you're a good friend of the comedian improviser Kevin Dorff, and he gets decompressed as he gets shot out the back of the Imperial spaceship. So Dorff decompressions, 8 out of 10. I really liked it as well. I'm going to get into what I thought were some clunky exposition scenes, which keep it a bit lower than your score, but still so much fun. And I'm going to say this right at the top. I think I figured out why I like so many scenes with the Razor Crest, and it's my fear of flying. Last week, he put the Razor Crest into a free fall, and, that really thrilled me. And this week, he's crash landing. He can't control it. It has a hilarious payoff you knew was coming when he's like, okay, almost there. Perfect smooth landing. Of course not. It falls into the water. I love it. Maybe my fear of flying makes those scenes too tense for me. It makes me enjoy them, as ridiculous as it sounds more. But 8 out of 10, really, really good. This is opening The Mandalorian to a much larger world, and I can't wait for the only 5 remaining episodes in this season. This is incredible. We're almost done.
Well, I mean, it's possible that next week will kind of be a step back again. That's what they like to do, like to advance the story and then bring it back again. I almost have a hard time, and I know this is unique to me probably. I have a hard time with the willing suspension of disbelief regarding the ship. We know how delicate space travel can be.
Sure.
And so the idea that a ship that has sort of been glued together and when it takes off has parts falling off from it is going to be worthy to fly through space. It's almost too far for me to enjoy just because my rational mind is like, it's not possible.
This is a galaxy far, far away where the decompression of space isn't as tough as it normally is.
I guess so.
Listeners, we've given you our rankings, as we like to say here on the Parsec Passion podcast. Who cares what we think? We want to know what you think. Write to us on social media, Twitter and Instagram. We're at double PHQ. That's the word double, the single letter P, and then the letters HQ for headquarters, at double PHQ. On Facebook, you go to facebook.com/double PHQ. On YouTube, you can just search up Parsec Passion Podcast. You'll find us. And to help you join into our crew, our motley crew of bounty hunters, we are giving away a big prize, Catfish, a bunch of prizes. We have a bunch of entries already, but Catfish, what is the main prize which our loyal listeners can win?
Well, it is a supposedly 10-inch tall, very awesome Funko Pop of the Mandalorian with the child.
It is really, really awesome. The only thing that's missing is it doesn't feel like real Beskar armor. When you lift it up, you still assume it's made out of plastic, but this thing is great, and we're going to be giving it away to one lucky loyal listener at the end of this season 2 of podcasts. How do you enter? All you have to do is, and we're making you jump a hurdle to enter this contest, and we apologize for it, but listeners...
We don't really apologize for it.
We're lying and saying that we're apologizing, but we're trying to give this prize to a subscriber. So if you subscribe on YouTube, take a screenshot of our page where it says subscribe. If you subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Podomatic, SoundCloud, Podbean, however you subscribe, take a picture of our podcast with the highlighted word subscribe there. Send it to us on one of our social media platforms. You'll be eligible to win that awesome Funko Pop or some of these other great prizes. Listeners, to be honest, go to our Instagram page, go to our Twitter page, go to our Facebook page. Look at all the prizes we're giving away. At this point, we almost have a prize for everybody who's entered. So besides the big Mando prize, if there's anything you see say what you'd like, because we got so many prizes, we're going to be giving them all away.
Think about this, Bubba. What we're doing here is we're trying to replicate the show for the users.
Yep.
So just think of subscribing and sending us a screenshot as your own personal side quest.
That's exactly right. We have great contest entries and or feedback today we're going to get to from @HarleyCamille on Twitter, Batman23 on Twitter, Edgar Danger on Twitter. We've got Matthew, Ryan, Matt Foster, Holly Hunt Bands on Twitter, on Facebook. Steven and Nathan gave us great feedback, and another Steven, plus on YouTube, Craig and Moo Sheep. We're going to be going all over all your feedback at the end.
But
listeners, we don't have any ads. We just have a constant braying of our voices saying, hey, talk to us at PHQ on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook.com/PHQ, YouTube comments. We want you guys to join us on this fun adventure. As ridiculous as it is, the fact that we are almost, believe it or not, at the halfway point of this season, if you only listen to us here on this Parsec Passion podcast, we have another great podcast on the network coming up, and that's going to be His Dark Material Season 2. We've got a podcast on that entitled The Dust. It's hosted by the great Double M, Matt Murdick, who does our music breakdowns, as well as the Double H, Holly Hunt Pants. And it's a great one. Go to your podcast provider, go to YouTube, search The Dust Podcast. You'll find them. They're great. And because after The Mandalorian, we may not be doing podcasts for a bit because some of our normal shows aren't coming up anytime soon, we encourage you to listen to our other podcasts. You'll find out all about this on our social media pages, but we've covered from Netflix, the great German show Dark, the other great German show Babylon Berlin. We've done The Last Kingdom, I assume an English show there on Netflix. On HBO, we just got done with Lovecraft Country and Game of Thrones. We've done the AMC anthology series, The Terror. We've done Dublin Murders, Twin Peaks, Jonathan Strange, Mr. Norrell, Ash vs. Evil Dead, The Rook, Emerald City, The Strain. We've got so many things. So if you're trapped inside this winter as we suffer through the end of this pandemic, please check out some of our other podcasts. We do really great jobs on them. Some of those shows are really fun to watch too, and I think our podcast really adds to that enjoyment. A couple of those shows, I won't say which ones, are kind of crummy shows, but we rag on them so much that also might be kind of fun.
I was going to say, I wonder how much of a dearth of programming would be required for The Rook to regain popularity.
Well, what about their 4 seasons of The Strain? And you'll strain to watch all 4. All right, Catfish, we don't have ads, but we've certainly pumped ourselves up a bunch. Why don't we get into this breakdown? And I've already talked about the beginning of this episode. It starts as this hunk of junk. This Razor Crest is completely terrible. We need to call AAA and help them out. They're in deep trouble, and they are limping in to the planet. They do this great fiery crash down. I think I realize why I like these scenes so much, and I mentioned it was my fear of flying. It makes me tense. It's fun. And that was a perfect joke when it really seems like, okay, we've got it. We're going to land. As soon as he said that, I knew something terrible would happen. But them all going in the drink, I loved it.
Everybody has their own quirks, Bubba. And mine is sometimes I just apply my rational mind too much to enjoy certain things.
Oh.
And it always comes back to this. I mentioned it last week. It always comes back to I'm thinking how could he afford fuel and fixing his ship? He's constantly doing these non-paid side quests. I mean, he's going to have to start selling off his armor piece by piece to afford to keep doing this.
He's going to look at his armor and said, well, I haven't been shot in my left thigh enough. I'll sell this piece of Beskar so I can get this hunk of junk back in shape. I laughed.
Yeah, so it's a weird thing. It's a weird thing that it's funny for you, but for me, it's just sometimes my rational brain just doesn't stop. You have to just shut up. The other thing that has to do with it is his armor. I mean, I know it's great, but every other Mandalorian armor we've seen is just shot to crap. I mean, at what point will his armor stop looking like Twoda is buffing it while the Mandalorian is asleep?
Baby Yoda, the child, the tween Yoda we call Twoda, he's got to earn his keep. So...
Well, I just wonder, if the Mandalorian sprayed it with some animal scent that Yoda could just be licking it the entire time the Mandalorian's asleep.
Yoda's
Lick
always
it
hungry. Why
clean.
not? Yeah. So how about this, Catfish? Last week in Chapter 10, you were very tough on a creature, even to this day, we've only known as Frog Lady. Was your heart warmed at all when Frog Lady saw Frog Gentleman? What did you think? This reunion we've been waiting a week for.
Yeah. It was heartwarming. It was heartwarming, but then it soon turned to ash with the only thing that really bothered me in this entire episode.
Okay, you gave a 9.5, so this took away the 0.5. Let's hear it. What was it?
It was, all right, we've done all this work. The frog husband knows this information that is secret and only he knows. And what is that information? Yeah, the Mandalorians are hanging out openly in the bar. Well, not hidden away in a place he only knows. They just hang out in the bar. It feels like Mando has been hoodwinked by the Frog Lady.
Or, hold on, let's give Frog Gentleman his due. Maybe he sees those eggs and realizes, I got to get fertilizing. And he doesn't have time to go through all the things. He's like, oh man, I got to take care of these eggs. I got to continue my line. Mando, go over there to the restaurant. Have some fun. Later, loser.
Either way, it seems like the Mando went through quite a bit to find out information that many people would know. Unless the frog husband is the only one who can see the Mandalorians when they go to the restaurant, then okay, I can see it. They're invisible to everyone else.
Well, we do see that one Mandalorian, the WWE wrestler Sasha Banks, there in a cloak on the pier, on the dock there, on this dock city. And so maybe he's the only one who's seen underneath the cloak to realize they're a Mandalorian. I don't know. Frogman was lonely, so he's looking under cloaks. But there's a rumor that if you watch Season 1's episode on Tatooine with infamous Toro Calican, when Mando goes there to the Mos Eisley Cantina, that Frogman is in that scene. So he and his wife at one point left the estuary moon of Trask, flew to Tatooine, and then she got left behind to lay some eggs, and he went back home. What's going on? Frogman, come on.
I don't know. It's a small universe for sure.
Because you had such trouble with their masks and the costumes, this week I really paid attention to the articulation, and it is a bit more than just that their eyes certainly open and close. There's the breathing bubble that is like back near their ear, but even their snouts have a little movement in them, and so not the most expressive costumes, but I still thought it was okay. It's certainly better than like the slee stacks of Land of the Lost from when we were kids, so I like it.
Oh, man. It's funny that you mentioned that because I didn't mention it in last week's podcast, but that is exactly what I was reminded of watching The Frog Lady. But yeah. I also didn't want to mention it because that really dates a slee stack reference.
Right, the original slee stacks, not in the Will Ferrell remake. Exactly right. Let's edit that out so no one knows.
Exactly.
Now, Catfish, we should mention that there was a Mon Calamari there at the dock who Mando's like, can you fix my ship? And he went, fix it? Eh. And now, as we walk down the dock on this pier, we see a lot of these Quarren aliens, which were first introduced in 1983's Return of the Jedi. They look like Davy Jones from the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. They sometimes were referred to as Squid Face back when we were kids. This restaurant is kind of packed with them. I even saw a Quarren with like a little knitted cap on his head, like he was in New England. The Mon Calamari had some waiters.
Awesome sweaters, too. Yeah. They were really rocking that look.
But the interesting thing is, if you know the Star Wars lore, both of these aliens are not from Trask. They're from a planet called Mon Calamar. And in the expanded universe, they're always fighting each other. So the ones that look like Admiral Akbar, the ones that look more like a squid head, always fight the ones that have the octopus tentacles hanging from their mouths. And the ones with octopus tentacles hanging, the Quarrens, they are always a-holes in all the stories. And sure enough, this one's like, I can take you to the Mandalorians. It's going to be a sea journey for a bit. And he's an a-hole. What's going on? We found a species that's all jerks.
So that must rocket them to the top of your favored Star Wars species.
Hey, why do you say that?
You love a good jerk. Come on, tell the truth.
And how about this? If everybody wants to rob you for your Beskar armor, Do you think maybe you should wear a cloak and a hood so people don't see it and want to rob you? This guy is pretty much taking him out to the open sea, going to feed him to this mama core, just so the mama core will kill him and then spit out the Beskar and they'll get rich. This is ridiculous. Put it in a bank, maybe.
Well, one of the things we found out here, Mandalorian not a fan of the sea, so he's clearly not with the Sea Org. Scientology joke number 2.
We'll get to Mando's religious zealot upbringing in a bit, but let's get to this first thing. We know, our logical brain knows, there's no way they can kill Mando. There's no way they'll kill Twoda on this show. But let's be honest, I was still shocked. I still gasped when he pushed Baby Yoda in, and that's one part of it. But when the Mama Core actually seems to swallow Baby Yoda's crib, that's incredible. I'm like, what in the world's going on? Mando dives in to save the child, but real quickly he forgets about saving the child, and he's like, I can't breathe. And
yeah,
so,
he does not seem to have the self-contained scuba Mando unit, as it seems like some of the others do that arrive to help him as he desperately needs help.
That'll be the accessory to the latest Kenner model of the Mando toy. What did you think when Baby Yoda got swallowed by this Mama Core catfish?
I mean, obviously, I didn't think that Baby Yoda would be done. I can't even imagine the nationwide outrage that would occur at the death of Baby Yoda. But it was still very exciting. It was a nice setup, like, oh yeah, bring the child over to see. It's curious that they also use the word the child. It seems like that is although that would be an unusual thing to say about babies in our world. In their world, it seems to be a standard use unless they all know about the child, then clearly they don't know about the child.
No, that's a great point.
I mean, I thought that was like special appellation, but if people who don't know about Yoda or Baby Yoda or its importance are still using it.
No, Catfish, I think that is a great point. You've seen other creatures that are about this size in the Star Wars universe. Nobody thinks Salacious Crumb was a kid when he would cackle at Jabba's side, but they look at Twoda and they know he's a child somehow, 50-year-old child.
For a species they've never seen before.
So, okay, last week I talked about the Deus Ex-Wing Machina. Mando gets thrown in with the Mama Core. Baby Twoda's been eaten by the Mama Core. When who shows up? It's the Deus Ex
Mandaloria.
Right, exactly. Love it. So what did you think when we had more Mandalorians showing up and kicking ass? I've heard some people describe this action scene as Power Rangers-esque, which you would think was a terrible slight. You had other people saying, I see those jetpacks, I see these people kicking ass. This is exactly what I come to the show for. What did you think of this little brawl, which took out all the Quarrens, freed Mando from the aquatic danger, and then freed Twoda? What did you think of this fight scene?
First of all, I thought it was very exciting, and it was cool. Part of the reason was that this didn't feel as Deus Ex Mandaloria as things have been in the past, is that he's been on a search for more Mandalorians for this entire season, right? And so the fact that what he's been searching for is what comes to save him, it doesn't feel unearned or cheap. It feels very fulfilling to the soul. You're like, yes, that's exactly what that's exactly right. So that part is great, as well as the part that anytime the Mandalorian gets saved, it's another tick in my fight against Patman 23 about the Mandalorian needing to be saved. It was the feeling so nice I had it twice during this episode.
So he's saved by these Mandalorians. You can definitely tell by two of their costumes that they are female Mandalorians.
So would you call them Mandalettes? I'm going to get in so much trouble for that.
You are going to get in trouble for that.
I couldn't help it.
Let me say, listeners, that was a question, not that we would.
Right. They are indeed Mandalorians.
Did you like their designs?
I thought they were really cool. We haven't seen a lot of Mandalorians, and it would make sense that, unlike the stormtroopers that are just sort of a mass army, that these Mandalorians are individual, and so they would have different looks. And now here's the point where I don't know, this might be the right time to do it. Bubba, I had no idea who these Mandalorians were.
And I think that is a great thing to talk about because some of the audience is going to see these Mandalorians, specifically the leader of these three, seemingly the one with the fancy design on her helmet, the one who does most of the talking, a Mandalorian who introduces herself as Bo-Katan. I had seen this character before who had appeared in Star Wars such as Rebels and Clone Wars. And so I knew some of her backstory, and Catfish, I think this is an interesting thing to talk about. She takes off her helmet. They all take off their helmet. So before we get into Bo-Katan just a bit more, I want to hear your thoughts as a non-viewer of the cartoon series when you suddenly see three people take off their helmets. What did you think?
This was another thing that gave me a high rating for this episode, a high rating. As someone who's not into all the details, and someone who was like, last year was like, well, I think he should take his helmet off. And people were like, that's dumb. Mandalorians don't take their helmets off. And so just live with it. This is the way.
Right.
They did a great job. So smart to set up a faux DeLorean a few episodes back, takes his helmet off and he goes, and Mando's like, you're not a Mandalorian. And Cobb Vanth was like, yeah, I'm not a Mandalorian. So the setup is there. You take your helmet off, you're not a Mandalorian.
Right.
And then when they take their helmets off and they say, yeah, we are Mandalorians, Mandalorians can take their helmets off unless they're a big fan of Tom Cruise movies.
Unless they're
Scientology joke number 3.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. Well, yeah, let's get to it. Now, Catfish, you haven't watched the cartoons, but the actress who has done the voiceovers of these characters, done the voice of this character in the cartoons, is Katie Sackhoff. She is a great actress. She was great in the remake of the second remake, or the first remake, I should say, of Battlestar Galactica, since there's rumors that there's another remake on the way coming. And she was great in that. I put some pictures of the cartoon character and the real actress in the show notes here. Do you think she looked close enough to her cartoon avatar? Do you think this pays off? What do you think?
Absolutely, I think she does. And I think this actor, because of her association with Battlestar Galactica, and let's face it, she never needs to work again. She just needs to go to sci-fi conventions for the rest of her life, and she'll live much better than you or I, Bubba.
Well, how about this? Now she can go as Battlestar Galactica and Star Wars. Yeah, she's got it made. She's great.
I'm telling you, she has got it made. So she brings a lot of, I don't know if the right word is, like sci-fi cred to this role, even despite the, besides the fact that she did it in the animated, I don't want to say cartoons, but in the animated series.
Right.
So like she makes a lot of sense here and is awesome to me, even though I didn't know she'd done it in the animated series. I know nothing about this character. It's just really, really cool here, as opposed to a character we'll talk about a little bit later on.
Okay, well, that'll be interesting. We'll get to it. So Bo-Katan, she takes off her helmet. With her are two characters who we've never seen before in an animated Star Wars or non-animated Star Wars. One is this WWE wrestler Sasha Banks, whose real name is Mercedes Varnado. Her character, her Mandalorian character, is named Casca Reeves, and the male Mandalorian with him, his character is named Axe Woves. But they're brand new. They theoretically haven't appeared on any animated show before. So why did I only go up to 8? I thought some of this exposition was slightly wooden. And for me, I really want to know how somebody like you, Catfish, who didn't know all this extra information, how you would feel when suddenly like, oh, Mando, you're part of the Children of the Watch. You're a religious zealot. Your beliefs are kind of nutso. Did you like that twist? Did you believe it? Could you understand the exposition they're trying to get across to you that, Mando, your beliefs aren't necessarily the norm?
I had no idea about any of this, and so I thought it was fascinating and interesting, and it made complete sense to me. It didn't feel wooden, maybe because it was all new information for me, but I'm a little confused only in that because, again, I have gotten pushback on the helmet off thing in such a way that it made me feel like this was new information to all the people who told me, don't be stupid, Mandalorians keep their helmets on. So this was new information to you too, wasn't it?
The show, The Mandalorian, which we're watching and recapping, is set approximately, and this is not easy to say, approximately 7 years since the animated shows would have been, at least. So those shows like Rebels. At the most, that was 7 years previous. Now, that said, a lot of this goes back to an animated Star Wars show called The Clone Wars, which would be ended about 26 years prior. So it feels like a lot of things have happened. Now, they called him a child of the Watch, and we had mentioned in season 1 that little child Mando, when those droids were coming in and shooting up his town and killed his parents. Child Mando, Din Djarin, was saved by members of this Mando splinter group called Death Watch. So if he's a child of the Watch, you could see how, well, okay, he was a foundling for Death Watch, and this is their policy. So they're a splinter group. What's interesting, though, is Mando, based on the fact he's played by Pedro Pascal and the fact that he was looked to be about 10 when the droids blew up his parents, you would assume he's maybe, once again, early 40s. And so it's weird that in his years of living, yes, he's been part of these coverts, but he's been out as a bounty hunter. We know that he hasn't, nobody else has told him, it's weird that you don't take off your helmet, when I've seen a bunch of other Mandalorians who do take off their helmets. Or with the Great Purge, are the Mandalorians so scattered to the wind that seeing them is as rare as theoretically seeing a Jedi was. So I'm having to wrap my head around that bit of it. The big thing I'll say, and to go back to your theory, Catfish, is this to me feels like they are really setting up possibly season 3. I don't really think it'll happen this year. They're possibly setting up a time where you're going to see Din Djarin, the Mandalorian, taking off his helmet an awful lot, and us really seeing Pedro Pascal. I would imagine, my own guess is we're only going to see his face maybe one time this season, just like we only saw it one time last season. But it feels like to me they're setting up, he's going to have a bit of an awakening and say, hey, she mocked my "this is the way" mantra a bit before, but it's like him going to be seeing that, you know what, there are multiple ways to be a Mandalorian. There are the multiple ways to be a man with honor. So, Catfish, I think, once again, I wouldn't suspect this season, but I would think very soon you're going to be able to see him without his helmet on an awful lot.
Was there any sense in this world before that helmet off was a viable alternative? And forget even that it was the majority philosophy by Mandalorians. Was there any idea that this was a viable even alternative for Mandalorians to have their helmet off? Or do you feel like the Mandalorian series is trying to retcon things so that we get to see Pedro Pascal?
I would say it's the exact opposite. In all those animated shows, the Mandalorians took off their helmets all the time. It felt like the show, The Mandalorian, is retconning that, hey, there's this mantra of this splinter group to keep your helmet on. And so that's the way it feels to me. And so it feels it feels like now we're beginning to turn towards the norm that we saw on all those animated shows.
So then did I misinterpret the pushback on I'm just feeling like, not that I felt sort of oppressed by it, but it really felt like when I was saying last season and this season, I want to see the Mandalorian with his helmet off, and people were saying, no, Mandalorians keep their helmets on. Were they just embracing this show or not aware of the previous? You understand where I'm coming from, right?
I understand where you're coming from.
I felt like
Catfish.
People were telling me, people were saying before, don't be ridiculous about wanting to see Pedro Pascal, and now we're finding out that like this is not the way Mandalorians usually operate.
Catfish, what I would say is if you felt a push one way or another, I could understand it coming, because what has happened is Lucas created these series. He licensed out the property for people to make books and comic books and other things. And so people kind of built out the world one way, and it got unruly. It was known as the expanded universe. Disney came in and said, this is all too crazy. There was already a bunch of stories set after Return of the Jedi, which if they had followed, would have kind of forced their hand on what they did with the sequel trilogy. And so Disney came in and said, you know what, all that stuff, we're going to call it Legends, and we're going to have one kind of set timeline going forward. So from what I've heard in some of those now called Legend books, that was kind of a mantra, like, hey, keep your mask on. And now in the new canon, that's not necessarily true. So I think people are torn on both ways, and hopefully
Okay, I understand
the
now.
Mandalorian can set that straight.
Okay, great.
Even though they saved his life, they saved the child, it felt like he really didn't like the fact that they took off their helmets. I loved the fact when she called him and said, "This is the way," almost mocking it to his face. But then he takes the child and he jetpacks away. He watches them from back on the docks, back on the pier, blow up the ship. And then sure enough, as soon as night falls, he's back in danger and they save him again. They really, they want him to help. He's been saved twice by these guys. And finally, after that second time, when it's the classic argument, "You killed my brother." Finally, after that second time, Mando, he exhales and he's willing to work with these people.
Yeah. Well, but the first thing they have to do is they have to hook him up to an e-meter. Make sure he's okay. Scientology joke number 4.
Catfish, with these cruel jokes you were making,
Yes.
Beck is never going to download our podcast.
Damn it. And I was hoping that Giovanni Ribisi would play me in the movie about this podcast.
Oh, no.
But I guess that's not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
Okay.
All right, so they bring him back to the restaurant, back to the inn where they serve that yucky gruel, and they kind of talk this through, like, hey, the Empire overthrew Mandalore, we're going to take it back. One interesting kind of through line is, remember the frog lady and her egg. She's like, "This is the last of my line. This is the last of my line. I need my husband to fertilize these eggs." Bo-Katan, this leader of these 3 Mandalorians, she points out that she used to rule Mandalore, and if you watch the animated shows, you know she did, but she also points out she's the last of her line. They'll point Mando to a Jedi, only on the condition that he helps them take down and steal weapons from a Republic cruiser, this is apparently a black market port, and they want to take it down. He can't win. People always need him to do stuff for them.
I feel like there's another way that Mando could have helped her to continue her line,
Now,
if you know what I mean.
there go our listeners who aren't Scientologists.
You don't want to ship these two?
She doesn't seem very flirty with him. Even last year in season 1 in the Prison Break episode, that one Twi'lek, she was flirting. The Twi'lek, she seemed to have a romantic past and a romantic interest in Mando. They had more chemistry, even though she tried to kill him a couple times, than this Bo-Katan did, in my opinion. And let's be honest, this other Mandalorian who was slurping her squid was seemingly making eyes at Twoda and not Mando.
All right, well, I guess Mando's got to go it alone.
So they got to attack this ship, and we get our final big action set piece. Before we kind of break it down beat by beat, what was your thought on this overall action set piece? Did you like this as a big thrilling action piece? Does it live up to the attack on the Great Dragon? How did it feel?
I did. There was some real fun in it. The whole, we've locked them into the cargo control bay.
Wait, where?
That was awesome. The only thing that was distracting to me, first of all, I don't know if you like it or not, or if other people don't like it, but I feel like in the Star Wars universe that all the people who are working for the Empire, they're all just like pure evil and horrible.
Right. I
like to see more of and again, it's a delicate line. You don't want to make it too funny, but let's face it, a lot of these people are not like, it's just a job. It's not like the guy who's like flying the ship is like, "I'm pure evil." He's like, I need a job, and the Empire's the one who has job. Or they're just small-time bureaucrats instead of pure evil. That makes more sense. So I like to see a little bit of that, and we saw it here a little bit. The only thing that was truly distracting to me was Titus Welliver, who was playing the opposite of that.
Right, he's the officer on the deck overseeing the 2 pilots.
Yeah, and I just have to say this. I mean, I know he has been in a lot of stuff, but I've watched him as on the Amazon show Bosch for like 6 seasons.
Yeah, he's the hero, the lead. He's Bosch on that show.
He's the hero. He's the lead. He has a very... I don't know how to say this. He's even on that show. He feels a little bit stiff in a weird way, And it's just kind of strange to see someone who's well known for, as I was saying, it's great to see Katie Sackhoff in like a sci-fi role. But then to see Titus Welliver, who to me comes off as so like 2020, it just felt a little strange and off to me.
Interesting.
What was your feelings about him?
Well, Titus Welliver, I thought he was not given much to do, and I actually wish he had been a bit more evil, because I think that might have made that whole scene pay more if he had been more kind of wickedly angry, wickedly evil.
But that's not his thing. He
wasn't evil on Deadwood? I thought he was pretty evil on Deadwood.
Yeah, he is, but he just comes across as, it's kind of a little flat, which I think works for like a hard-boiled detective thing, but I don't know. He kind of stuck out to me. Like, this is the problem to me sometimes with casting famous people in very small roles. And it happens a lot. It happens in other TV shows. It happens in movies where they kind of like overwhelm the part, because in a way it sort of sets you up an interesting thing, because maybe you're thinking, well, this is Titus Welliver. He's going to be here for a lot of episodes and then he dies. So in that way, it's kind of good that it's a surprise, but it kind of takes away from falling into the series. Falling into what's happening, because I'm thinking too much, oh, Titus Welliver, he's doing a small part on this. You know what I mean? Sometimes it doesn't help to cast famous people because you're thinking about them rather than the story.
Well, Catfish, you keep talking about recognizing Titus Welliver. I really don't know exactly how famous he is, even though he has been in a lot of things. I mentioned at the top of this podcast, for me, it was Kevin Dorff. After college in the mid-90s, I moved to Chicago to study and do improv there. And who was one of the big improvisers on the block in Chicago was this guy named Kevin Dorff. He ended up leaving Chicago and moving to New York and working and being a writer for the Conan O'Brien show and among other things. And he is the deck officer back in the cargo hold who puts on a brave face, and then he's suddenly like, as soon as he sees it's Mandalorians, he's like, close the doors, lock the doors, let's lock the doors, close the blast doors, and he runs and hides. And I loved that. And I thought his death was hilarious when he gets sucked out with the other stormtroopers there in the cargo hold. I loved it. I thought it was fun. And that's somebody I've known for over 20 years. I loved it.
Yeah,
Catfish, you gave this a 9.5, and now you keep finding little flaws with it.
There's no right answer here as far as like you want to hire great people for stuff, but it also feels like if you overhire, taking away some of the joy of it. Let us not focus on the people that we're seeing, and let's focus on the story more.
Interesting. Listeners, we've talked about this. We want to know how you feel. Once again, write to us. Here's one of those non-ads that we keep interrupting the podcast for, but we do want to talk to you. We do want to hear from you. Write to us on social media, on Twitter and Instagram, at @PHQ, the word double, the single P, and then the letters HQ for headquarters, at @PHQ on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook.com/PHQ, YouTube. Leave those comments. We love them. We're going to be going over them in a bit. So, suddenly, Bo-Katan changes the deal. They got the weapons. That's what this whole thing was about. And she's like, these weapons are great, but what would be really great, what's really going to help us take back our planet, our system of Mandalore, we want the damn ship. And so Mando, he did something that I've really been thinking about for a while. If this Beskar armor is as awesome as it appears to be, now admittedly it doesn't cover your whole body, but if somebody's shooting at you, you don't want to just risk it and step out into the line of fire so you can take these suckers out. Mando did it. Thank God they didn't hit him in a non-armored place. Stormtroopers never find the right place to hit. But
especially with their in-world Gatling gun.
Right. But he needed to blow him up real good so he could get the name of this Jedi so he could complete this side quest. And he goes out like a boss, getting shot up like there's no tomorrow so he could throw his seemingly flash grenades to blow him up.
When you talked about the flash grenades, this happens twice in this episode. And again, this doesn't knock it down. I just find it kind of amusing. Apparently nobody in this world knows or even has any preservation instinct when someone throws something at their feet that is ticking and blinking. It happens twice in this episode that people are like, what's that? I'm sure it's not a problem. I'll just keep firing and not hide from it.
Oh, they just dropped their Apple Watch. No big deal. Wait, what?
They're like, oh, there you go. I'm sure this is completely... Ah!
Now, Catfish, before this happened, there was a scene that I loved. It was our first sign of Giancarlo Esposito, a.k.a.
so good.
Moff Gideon. He comes on, the captain on deck is saying, we need reinforcements. And instead, it's like, you know what you need to do? Long live the Empire. Stone cold. I loved it. Pilots,
Boom.
you got an early retirement. It's time to scuttle the ship. I thought that was great. I thought that was tense. I love seeing Giancarlo Esposito. I wish he was in this show more. And we need a good villain, a hero. How do you know he's a true hero? When he defeats a great villain. These monsters he's been defeating, and we've seen them every week, whether it was the Great Dragon, the giant spiders, this week the Mamacor. Those are great. But I want my hero to take down and have a great opponent. And Moff Gideon can be it. And when they decide to blow up the ship, that to me was, oh, hell yeah, I love this. And it made that final bit tense. Once again, maybe it's my fear of flying when he's like, okay, let's just crash this ship. But I loved it. I thought it was great.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I have to say, I'm starting to do with a couple of experiences in this episode. I'm wondering, everybody has their specialties, right? Not people can't be great at everything.
Right.
I think at a certain point, we need to consider, okay, how are Mando's hand-to-hand fighting skills?
Right.
How are his projectile fighting skills? But also, how good are his flying skills?
Well, he can prevent a ship from crashing, we know that, or purposely crash a ship, which he's done with the Razor Crest a couple of times.
I mean, when you say prevent a ship from crashing, I mean, he just got lucky that at the beginning that he had some nice cushy water right next to him when he tried to land on that landing pad. I'm just saying, I'd never considered it before. I think at a certain point we might want to assess Mando's flying skills.
Just tell baby Chwoda, use the Force to put me down gently. Now, Catfish, we're coming in for a crash, and I know you seemingly have had trouble with this actor Titus Welliver playing this part, but for me, the highlight of him playing the part was him biting down on that damn poison pill that put those shock waves through his teeth. I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought, ooh, what a brutal way to go. Electric teeth shocking. Oh.
I mean, I guess that's the coward's way out. You got to take people down with you.
That's what I want to do, yes.
In the end, I don't know whether he should get his gold watch posthumously or not.
Well, how about gold dentures? No, those would conduct electricity too much. He needs something else. Bo-Katan and these three Mandos have succeeded in their mission with Din Djarin's help. They've taken over this cruiser. They're going to get these weapons. Theoretically, though, we find out another piece of the puzzle. Bo-Katan, the show never explicitly said it, but she is the heiress. What does she want? She wants the dark saber, which we saw Moff Gideon with at the end of season 1. If you followed those animated shows, you know that
I did not.
It's a bit ritualistic. The person who holds the dark saber symbolically rules Mandalore. She wants it back. She is the heiress. We now have two people, not just Mando himself, but now a second person fighting Moff Gideon. How did you feel about this reveal, Catfish?
I'm sure we talked about this last year, but my knowledge of what the dark saber represented or its power, I mean, I didn't remember what it represented. I assumed maybe it had some sort of special power, and that's why she wanted it. I had no idea that it was essentially a totem for control. I mean, I thought it was cool. It didn't bother me that I didn't really know about it, but, it just added another piece to the puzzle. But I wonder what it means going forward.
I do too.
Because the question is, like we did at the end of the first episode this season, where we saw Boba Fett, and we thought, okay, we're going to kind of follow that. And that's been almost, I don't want to say almost, that's been completely dropped. So the question is, at what point is this going to come back? Knowing what we know about the way this series works, we know that we should not expect this to be followed up in the next episode.
No.
Maybe the next episode after that. Maybe the third season entirely. I mean,
maybe the fourth season or fifth season.
You can't expect that something that has been developed and is intriguing is actually going to be followed up on.
I think, Catfish, it is going to be followed up on. The question is when, and we both agree not immediately.
Right.
there are a couple of things. Jon Favreau, he keeps mentioning in several interviews about this show, he keeps mentioning that he loves Game of Thrones, or loved Game of Thrones since that show is wrapped up.
Now, what quick question, though.
Yes.
I want to know what his feelings were about the final season.
He doesn't mention those in interviews, Catfish, but let me continue without interruption. So he keeps mentioning he loves Game of Thrones, and he implies in some of these interviews that he wants The Mandalorian to take on a Game of Thrones type structure. Now, if you haven't watched Game of Thrones, I'll try to be general and non-too spoilery in this. But one thing about Game of Thrones is they do, very early on in the first season, kind of set up an overarching goal. Like, okay, there are all these squabbles, but there is this end goal, this end antagonist. In The Mandalorian, through a season and now 3 episodes, it does feel like they've set up the end goal, the end antagonist, the end kind of thing. This somehow feels like this show is going to end with the freedom of the planet Mandalore. That feels like what they're going. Now, the second thing is Game of Thrones is able to do that because there are all these characters. It's a whole world we're populating. Mando hasn't felt like a whole world. So far, the show is very focused on Mando and the child. It's like that's what the show is about. It doesn't really feel like it's about the whole world. It feels like it's about a very personal mission. And so how are you going to tie this personal mission to the whole world? Well, I think that's the fun that we're going to see. The other thing I'll say about Game of Thrones, which was very smart, is that in Game of Thrones, there are all these kind of warring factions. But within each warring faction, there's like fighting within each faction. So if there's one clan that feels one way and we want to do this, you'll often see a lot of infighting in the clan. So there's drama that. So it's not only they're fighting these other clans, they're fighting amongst themselves. Now that we have this idea that Mando is this part of this religious zealots, it feels like, yes, all these Mandalorians want to take back Mandalore and liberate the planet, but it feels like we could have some internal squabbles and fights there as well, which might be interesting. So it feels like they are trying to set up much. As far as Boba Fett, I'll say that, yeah, it feels like we've left him behind, but Boba Fett tracking Mando isn't going to be that hard because the Razor Crest leave parts of it everywhere he goes. So Mando's just going to be following these pieces of space junk, and he's going to be like, okay, he was here. Now he was here. Where did he go next? Oh, there's this space junk here. Let's follow it. That's my own thought, even though technically Bo-Katan points him towards a character by the name of Ahsoka Tano, who's at the city of Caladan on the forest planet of Corvus. Catfish, have you ever heard of Ahsoka Tano?
Oh, no, of course not.
Another Star Wars animated character, one which has had a very interesting life. Ahsoka Tano was a Jedi Padawan first introduced in the theatrically released Star Wars The Clone Wars movie, which got really panned because it was really supposed to be the pilot to a TV show, and Lucas was like, well, maybe we ought to release this in theaters. And not just was the movie panned, in that animated Star Wars film, The Clone Wars, Ahsoka Tano, Star Wars fans hated her. But she didn't go anywhere. She grew across the Clone Wars animated show to become one of the most popular characters, and then she started making appearances in the animated show Rebels, and she's grown to become one of the most beloved characters of Star Wars, which has never appeared in one of the live-action films. And now they're pointing towards her. I certainly don't think we're going to see her in the next episode. We got to have some more side quest stuff. But this, for fans of the animated series, this has been met with like, this is incredible news. They're so excited. For somebody like you who hasn't watched the animated shows, who've never heard of the character Ahsoka Tano before, put all that aside. When you heard it, were you excited like, ooh, okay, this feels like Mando's going to reach this part of his journey, find a Jedi? Or were you like, okay, here we go. He's going to go on. He's got to find yet another person before he gets to his end goal. What did you feel when you heard that reveal at the end of the episode?
I have to confess, I'm a little taken aback at the idea that the Mandalorian show is going to follow the path of Game of Thrones, in that there's sort of this larger world. I mean, we're almost halfway through season 2, and it feels like more than half of the episodes have been pretty much kind of one shots. Mm-hmm. And so I guess if you wanted The Mandalorian to go for a number of seasons and you were like, okay, we're just going to add, instead of the way Game of Thrones did, which is sort of, admittedly, this was a challenge for Game of Thrones and a lot of people who weren't readers of the books, they did introduce the larger world very quickly in the first season, so you understood all the different things. And then this is, if we're really going to expand a lot, they are sure taking their darn time doing it. I think that could be a very cool way to do it, but I'm not convinced that that's what they're actually going to do, considering things get picked up and dropped, and we don't expect these other Mandalorians to sort of come back anytime soon. It would be strange, don't you think, that at this point in this second season, that then we're going to get like a larger story? Again, like you said, it's a small story. It reminds me of when Ms. Catfish and I started watching the series Spartacus on Starz. And we're watching 2 or 3 episodes, and I was like, all right, this is great. There's lots of fighting. There's lots of steamy sex and nudity, and this is all great.
So just like The Mandalorian.
Right. So it's I felt like, okay, this is kind of throwaway trash, but enjoyable. And then as the season started to go along, it became like way more complex. I became surprised at how complex and interesting it was, and almost kind of like a Rome kind of, the series Rome kind of thing, where it really expanded the world and became fascinating to grow out of something that I thought was just kind of sleazy fun. But again, that happened in the first season. So it would be strange to sort of divert from what we thought was happening.
I'm not sure it was planned from the beginning, Catfish, but to me, it feels like it's trying to get there. Now, I will say that one of the big influences on George Lucas when he made Star Wars A New Hope back in 1977, there were times where he almost thought, well, I'll just buy the rights to this film, A Hidden Fortress, and just make that. Having seen A Hidden Fortress recently in the last year, that almost follows this path where you're following these two bumbling guys who seemingly became R2-D2 and C-3PO, and then suddenly you follow them by people they meet. It opens up and becomes an epic thing of people reuniting a kingdom almost. So I do see that's where the show's going. It's going there in a very odd way. But somehow, to me, it doesn't feel like you would introduce these elements unless that was the plan, was to open it up to this larger world.
I guess it just feels like they're doing it very slowly, and it doesn't feel like they're actually committed to it. But on the other hand, if this happens where we start off with a very simple thing and then it becomes this kind of huge, fascinating world, that would be amazing. That would be amazing.
Listeners, once again, tell us what you think at DoublePHQ on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook.com/DoublePHQ, YouTube comments. Catfish, let's end up by talking about a character we really haven't talked about much in this episode, and that's Twota, Baby Yoda the child. Mando has come...
Oh, I thought we were going to talk about the client.
R.I.P. Is it weird that, Katie Sackhoff and all these actors we've mentioned so far, I still feel like the one who was perfectly suited for this world was our boy? Let me see the baby.
Yes, they should have realized by the time they got to the end of the first season that there's no way that we can kill this character off.
They shouldn't have killed him off.
But it's just too amazing.
They shouldn't have killed him off. That was a terrible mistake. But no, I was going to say, we haven't talked much about the child in this episode. Mando has completed his mission of the week. He goes to the frog people's place to pick up baby Twota. Twota seemingly is no longer a mass murderer. He has become fascinated by this little baby frog. They leave. They get this Razor Crest, which is a big hunk of junk, even after the repairs by the Mon Calamari. They take off, and then there's an odd moment where...
Mon Calamari.
Yeah, exactly. Nets and fishing wire. Crazy. But then there's this odd moment where, oh, wait a minute, is there another monster that's going to attack Twota? Nope, it isn't. Mando crushes it. The end. What'd you think for Twota's role in this episode? Just constantly to be put in danger and then to get out of it by being saved. Any thoughts on him this episode?
I don't want to ruin the Twodorable moments. I feel like almost every moment with Twota was Twodorable.
Oh, yes.
So let's save that for the Twodorable moments.
Okay, then let's get to listener feedback, which is what we love.
Yes, absolutely. Especially when they are agreeing with me. Camille at Harley Camille says, this is for Chapter 10.
Right.
Harley Camille says the episode was funny and tense for me. The frog lady was weird, but Baby Yoda's acting like a hungry toddler. Love Baby Yoda. So put Harley Camille in the pro eating of children column.
Hey, let me read this great feedback we got from @Patman23 on Twitter. Patman wrote, I liked Chapter 10 better than Catfish, but was probably more critical than Bubba. Hey, now, I do...
He's always trying to split the difference.
I know. I do like these side quest type of stories, so I had no issue about that. It's hard not to imagine Baby Yoda as a monster now. Its go-to move is eat first, never ask questions later. I completely agree with that. If later on we learn some high-ups in the New Republic who know what's going on and for some reason doesn't want Mando to interfere with that, I'll accept with them, saving Mando at the end, but he's not sure. And it would explain the X-Wing pilots being given the cavalry to the rescue orders, but also to only rescue so much and leave him on the ice planet. And that's what he's holding in his head canon at the moment. Thank you so much, @Batman23. Catfish, we got some feedback about this episode from Edgar Danger on Twitter.
All right, @Poe Trial, P-O-E Trial says, I loved the expansion on the Mandalorian lore. Significant improvement to last week. Agreeing with me, anti-you. Also, Mando continues to be the most gullible Mandalorian in the universe.
Oh, most gullible Mando should be on his business card.
Oh my God. And also, and this is not meant in a completely dirty way, but I will say this. I did a little hashtag myself this week. Hashtag Mando needs a hando.
Wait a minute.
That means
Wait a minute.
he has no help. He needs help defeating things. Edgar also tweeted a hashtag Frog Lady in the Tub.
Yeah, he's talking about Chapter 10 now.
Chapter 10, this was not a great episode of Mando. It was maybe good or okay. Hashtag filler. I'm increasingly annoyed by Twoda. Not cute, not funny. Let's face it, annoying, maybe downright evil. Great podcast, ep though. Best Mando cast. Parsec Passion needs to keep the music going. I have spoken.
Love it.
Yeah, absolutely great. Matthew @_Magen says, keep up the great work and give me that Mando.
Ooh, thank you so much. He apparently maybe listens on Overcast FM. Also on Twitter, Ryan, who's at @R_James_S, wrote, hope you gents are well. Enjoying the pod as well as your analysis. Excited about the possibility of getting that Funko Pop. Hey, you're registered, Ryan. Don't worry. Last week's episode was somewhat filler, but the show's fillers are better than 95% of any other show on TV. Thoroughly entertained, but not a ton of plot movement. It's only season 2, episode 2. He's talking about obviously last week. He said, hopefully plenty of time to elevate the stakes. Ah, man, it breaks my heart when anything negative is said about the little man Twoda. Let's hope he stays on the good side. Well, Ryan, love it.
But I know we talked about this last week, and I was sort of joking about Twoda being ultimate evil, but it feels like there's been a lot of discussion about this last week.
Yeah.
People are really fascinated by this in a way that, and this is what I was talking about, sort of a downer for last week's episode. I don't think they quite understand what they're saying about Yoda, and so that's about Baby Yoda. So that's my concern with them. Like, a lot of people were like, "Oh my God, does this mean that Baby Yoda could be trending toward evil?" And I'm not sure whether the show was trying to posit that. I think they were just making jokes.
They were just making jokes, but everybody else had a different take.
Right, but they don't understand what they've opened up. And I feel like, I don't know whether they're trying to avoid it, but this has been a huge, huge part of all the movies of someone who has the Force. Are they going to embrace the dark side or the light side? Yep. And so I feel like, I don't want to say irresponsible, but it's sort of a little weird for them not to realize that by doing that, they've kind of have opened up this larger discussion. And it seems crazy that they weren't aware of it, and that this discussion, which, as I said, has kind of been central to all the movies, is something that they didn't deliberately open.
Wait a minute. You don't remember the scene in the prequels where Anakin's talking about the Sand People, the Tusken Raiders. He's like, I killed them. Not just the men, but the women and the children. And I ate their eggs, one by one. The last of their line of eggs.
Right. And we all laughed. We're like, that's no big deal.
Little Annie.
I mean, I read a lot of like serious pieces this week about people saying like, yeah, Baby Yoda could be going to the dark side, which again is a fascinating and it has a huge foundation in the Star Wars movies, this kind of discussion that they don't seem to be willing to have because they're like, nah, it's just a bit, guys. Calm down.
They did.
People are like, this is not a bit.
It's not. Well, Yoda bit more than he could chew of these eggs.
Oh, God. All right. So I'm sorry I brought that up, but not really. Matt Foster at Fat Monster says, I've got to go with at Fit and Trim on his latest argument. Bubba. I'd love to know more about Boba Fett, but more importantly, I'd like to see more of the galaxy. I don't know how many seasons are past, but we can Western in the jungle too. And he says, at Musical Concepts, absolutely killing the musical knowledge. Super interesting. The bells give you the sound of cold.
Love it.
Also, the Lydian mode. Very cool. The Force is strong with musical concepts. Big thanks to Fit and Trim for making me sound even more nerdy as I've added yub nub to my frequently used catchphrases. Please explain the appropriate time to use this phrase. Can you say it instead of hooray, what's up, or great funeral?
Yub nub. Da 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 yub nub da 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 da. He's dead. I'm sorry. That is when you don't use yub nub.
I'm a huge fan of Toshiro Mifune samurai movies. Love it. I would say a lot of those movies, there was an expression that seemed to be sort of generic, and I do like to say it.
Okay.
It could express frustration or just a sort of a comment on something, and he would all the time say, Yosh. So I feel like yub nub's like that. You could be like yub nub, or you could be yub nub. You can use it for anything. It just depends on how you say it.
Yes, and don't say dank ferric unless you're really PO'd.
Yub nub.
Hey, it's Holly Huntpants, who's going to be hosting our podcast, The Dust, on his Dark Materials Season 2. She said on Twitter, it's looking up for Catfish's mask argument. This is the way? ? Which is the way? Is that the way? She said the most intense moments for her were the double T's.
Double T's?
Twota Temptations. Oh, eating those eggs, baby. Now, we also got a bunch of great notes on Facebook. We had Stephen Manzik write, I dig the musical explanations. Ha ha ha. Star Wars music explained is cool. Keep it coming. Well, we got a section from Double M Matt Murdick coming up in a bit. Thank you, Stephen.
It feels like not only is this value added for you, but it feels like Matt's become the favorite person on this podcast. So we've been usurped, Bubba.
It makes sense. What did Nathan write, Catfish?
Nathan wrote, love the show. I've been subscribed to Parsec Passion since the beginning. It started off strong with Chapter 9. Chapter 10 was enjoyable, but a little bit let down after a strong start. I think the slower side quest episodes would go over better if the show was bingeable.
Oh, that is a great point, Nathan. Now, what do you think, Catfish? If this show was bingeable, like if all the episodes dropped at once, would it be better because you could just pound through these? And as Nathan points out, a quote-unquote side quest, it's over in half an hour and you can immediately continue on with it? Or is it better week to week? Now, I want to add as just a little flavor to this, is that great Amazon Prime show, The Boys. It decided to not drop all at once, but to release its episodes week to week. And it frustrated certain viewers so much that they went to IMDb and downrated all the episodes, and they were screaming and yelling, why can't I binge this? This is terrible. This is the old way. We don't like it. What do you think, Catfish? Would the show be better viewing experience as a binge?
You know, I'm torn about this. First of all, I think he's absolutely right that the things where we're like, well, how does this connect to the larger story? We have to wait another week to find out what's going on here. This storyline was kind of a trifle compared to the overall. I think you definitely would feel that less if you were able to binge it. I have to say, though, Bubba, and maybe it's because I'm an old man now, but I actually appreciate having to wait and be able to digest these things and think about these things rather than having it all come into a blur and then specific things don't matter. I mean, I binged the last 4 seasons of The Last Kingdom in about 2.5 weeks, and I love that show. But I do feel like there is value to waiting and digesting rather than just kind of like having it run all together in your mind.
I watched The Boys season 2 and I enjoyed it like you. I loved that time of having a weekly release and waiting and thinking about it. I like this on The Mandalorian. I think it really works. A show now on Netflix that I'm binging, but I'm slow binging, is The Queen's Gambit. And what's fun about that...
No, I'm not slow binging it.
Oh, did you burn through it or did you just give up on it?
We started Friday night. Or maybe Thursday night. We've seen 4 episodes in about a day and a half.
Oh, okay. Well, I watch 1 episode a day, and I enjoyed that, but I'm able to set it at my own pace. So I guess if you dropped them all at once, every viewer could kind of do it for themselves to see the pace they wanted to do it at. And for some, that would be fast. I think some would want to slow down if they all dropped at once, and maybe that's a benefit to that. It's all at once. Listeners, once again, write us and let us know how you feel. Stephen Jones, let's go to more feedback. Stephen Jones on Facebook wrote, "So glad you guys are doing this. I love our Game of Thrones podcast too." Oh, thank you, the Joffrey podcast. And he said, "This is the way. Chapter 9 was excellent. Best Star Wars film," he's calling Chapter 9, since Disney took over. Chapter 10 with the Ice Spiders, not as good as Chapter 9, but still pure Star Wars, Clone Wars, Rebels. And he says he's still getting over the child eating her eggs. And he made this shocked face. Yeah. I thought during the episode that Twoda knew the future and was storing the eggs, kind of like you did, Catfish, so that at least some of them survive. Chapter 11 kind of blew that theory out. But thank you so much, Stephen.
Yeah, I'm not the only one. I read some other people who were also thinking there's no way that they're actually letting Yoda eat her children.
Hey, what did Laura say?
Again, I'm not sure that the writers themselves realized what can of worms they were opening. But Laura says, "I really enjoyed all the Mando dad moments." Laura McMillian, especially when he wagged his finger at him. No. I love the music piece too. When Matt was playing Baby Yoda's theme on the piano, it reminded me of Charlie Brown music. Oh, George Winston. Oh. Yes, George Winston.
Thank you, Laura. Laura gave us that feedback as we were recording this episode. Guys, we love your feedback. We always try to get it in. 2 final bits of feedback from YouTube. Craig G wrote, "Wait, what? Baby Yoda isn't a real being? What the hell? What are you saying?" And that was on our comments last week, Catfish. We revealed that Baby Twoda was a puppet.
But I just want to remind Craig, like you've said repeatedly, we try to have a serious breakdown of things, but sometimes we also just like to make jokes too.
Yes.
So I just want to remind Craig that was completely just a joke.
Amen.
Baby Yoda is absolutely a real being that eats children.
And our final bit of feedback this week is from Moo Sheep on YouTube. They wrote, "This was a double P episode.
Double P?
Prominent puppet. Twoda walking in the snow in Chapter 10 was like a figure being pulled over a bunch of cotton."
I love that Moo Sheep was in on the joke with us. Craig, Moo Sheep making a joke.
Simple joke. Hey, a lot of people said that they love our musical analysis. Well, let's get to that right now. It's time for Double M Matt Murdick breaking down this week's music on The Mandalorian.
So, I know we talked about this theme last week, but did you hear that when it showed up in this episode, Chapter 11, when the child was playing with the new baby frog? Hi, Double M. And what that does is it kind of graduates this theme because it's more than just in one episode. There's essentially 4 different kind of classifications of themes. There are ones that are just used in a specific episode. This one has graduated probably to a situational theme, meaning a specific character doing a specific thing, hence the child being in wonderment. Or it could be a series or character theme. Each of those span over many, many episodes and just represent a character or a main theme of the series. I'm not ready to go that far yet with this one, but it has graduated to at least a situational or conceptual theme, meaning that it's something that applies to a certain situation, and we could hear it in multiple episodes. There was a theme that I've yet to decide whether it's just going to be for this particular episode or if it's going to persist It's actually kind of really just a motive, which is part of a theme. But it happened when Din was trying to do his re-entry. And it was actually down low in the bass, but then it got doubled in the strings. So I'm going to play it up higher here so it's a little more identifiable. Now, I can apply one of my key things about scoring. I can apply rhythm or /meter, either how it's put together rhythmically or how it is counted. And this particular motive has a 5/8 feel to it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is a particular rhythm that is used a lot to kind of throw us off, to make us feel like things might not be so great. I don't know if I've mentioned this before in this podcast, but I've often said in other podcasts that when our rhythms are asymmetrical, like a 5 or a 7 or a 9, then we tend to feel more uneasy than when they are symmetrical, like a 2 or a 4 or an 8, because the accents happened in places that we aren't expecting. The rhythm of 5 has been used a lot. If you think way back to the Mission Impossible theme, way back in the earliest days of television, then you get a 5 theme there too, and that always felt kind of weird. It always felt, well, impossible. And that was a great way to do that theme, but this is the one I'm talking about. But even that doesn't feel quite as off-putting as that 5/8 motive. For instance, let me play these two things, the Mission Impossible, against the motive that Ludwig did, and you'll hear some differences in where the accents are. So as you can see, even the accents don't line up exactly, even though they do end up at the same place. It's still a count of 5. You can subdivide 5 in many ways, which is probably one of the reasons why asymmetry in rhythm is something that disturbs us, because there's too many possibilities as to how to feel it. One other quick theme to talk about that we got in this episode, and I don't know if we'll get it in any more, and that was a theme for the fellow Mandalorians, specifically Bo-Katan, in this episode. And I went back and I checked through a lot of Clone Wars episodes where Kevin Kiner had scored those to check to see if Ludwig had borrowed this from any themes possibly for Bo-Katan there. Doesn't seem to be anything regarding Bo-Katan and this theme that Ludwig did in the Clone Wars. Is that an oversight? Probably not. Ludwig probably just wanted to do something different. Or if this is simply episode specific as opposed to related to Bo-Katan, then perhaps it's just because of this situation in this particular episode that Din and Bo-Katan find themselves in. We'll have to see. If we see Bo-Katan again and we get this theme again, then just like we graduated the child wonderment theme earlier, we can graduate this one too. But it always takes more than just a one episode sample size to make those kinds of determinations. One other thing to note about that is its melodic shape, another one of my key elements to music scoring. Notice that this melody starts high, jumps way down a full octave, starts to climb back up, then falls again, and the last fall is about half the distance of the first fall. All of this is indicating that something is descending down, either upon Din himself or just Bo-Katan's presence. I mean, she does want her dark blade. She's willing to go to all kinds of lengths to get it. It's not a hopeful or rising or stirring theme. It's very in your face. That's it for me. Back to the boys.
Catfish, Double M is added value. People want to skip right to his stuff because it's certainly more intelligent than the silliness we say.
Absolutely. I understand now why Double M is more popular than we are.
It makes so much sense. But hey, we're going to end this episode of the Parsec Passion podcast the way we end every episode. That's with some of our games, some of our call-outs. Catfish, do you want to lead us through some of the adorable moments of the show?
I mean, basically every time.
Every time.
They're really leading into the Twadorability.
They are.
One of my moments was, the cooing at the beginning of the episode. Then when he was sad, he couldn't have any more eggs. When he was attacked by his food.
He was playing with his food.
Turnabout is fair play. Eyeing the eggs later on in the episode. And then crying when he was taken away from the frogs at the end of the episode. It's unclear to me. Mando interprets them that he wants them as pets. Based on my experience with Yoda, I don't think he wants them as pets after they're born. So that's up in the air. Pets or dinner?
Pets or food, the great Michael Moore bit from Roger and Me.
So what was your adorable moment of the episode?
Well, it was right before that last one you listed, Catfish. I think anybody who didn't see Baby Yoda kind of taking a finger and playing with that tadpole, that new frog in the bowl, I thought that was truly adorable. This show, but your first comment was the most correct. Every time he's on screen, it's adorable. They've got a gold mine in Baby Yoda. How about you? What was your favorite?
They sure do. For me, I mean, I enjoyed him being attacked by his food just because of the hashtag irony. But I like it when he was sad when he couldn't have any more eggs. Poor disappointed Yoda, unable to murder anymore.
That's why you watch each week. Who will he kill this week? Whose line will he end?
Exactly.
He killed the Mudhorn.
Exactly.
Or he allowed the Mudhorn to be killed. Okay, hey. We talked about Yoda. How about the star of the show, The Mandalorian? What are your Mandalicious lines of the week?
Okay, well, as you mentioned, when Yoda gets attacked by his food, and Mando says, "Don't play with your food."
Love it.
And then when he leaves Yoda behind with the frog lady and the frog man, he says to Yoda, "Be respectful. You know what I'm talking about." I did like that one. The coded language, be respectful. All right, what was your Mandalicious line
honestly,
of the
Catfish,
episode? Or do you have another one?
Catfish, that one that you just said about be respectful. Everybody knows what Mando's talking about. I love it. But, I'm going to go off the board a bit for my Mando-splaining, my Mandalicious line. Everybody he meets, he puts in a purity test. You're not a real Mandalorian. Like, literally, he could meet Mandalore the Great, and he would still say, I can see through your mask a bit. You're not a real Mandalorian. Come on, Mando. Leave the cult. Get with the rest of us. Take off your helmet. That's my Mando-splaining line of the week. What was your favorite of those?
I like that. Yeah, no, I'm going to go with be respectful. You know what I'm talking about.
Or how about it's just plain diss by dissing a whole species? Mon Calamari.
That was a good one. Although I didn't feel that he was racist because basically it was not a good patch job.
He paid a lot of calamari flan for that, and what a crappy job. The Yelp review of that guy is going to go way down. All right, 2 more games to play, listeners. Catfish, it is time for Grief's Beefs. The Bounty Hunter Guild battle. We battled to find out who wins the puck. And Catfish, we've been really great at those. After Chapter 9, we had a battle about, is Baby Yoda the ultimate evil or not? And then the next week, he's eating this woman's eggs. Last week, we said, hey, do we want Mando to tie into the larger Star Wars universe or not? This week, suddenly, he's meeting other Mandalorians. He's getting involved in a plot to take back Mandalore. So this week, what's our Grief's Beef? What are we going to have in our Bounty Hunter Guild battle?
Well, first of all, let's just do a recap. I won the first week's one.
Since I said Ultimate Evil, for sure. You won that one.
Yoda was Ultimate Evil. Last week, I argued that we shouldn't engage with the larger universe, and based on my rating for this week's episode where we engage with the larger universe, I clearly lost that sure one. Did. I took a huge L. I almost took 2 L's. So even though there's been 2 episodes, I'm down 2-1.
Right. So Catfish, our Grief Beef this week ties specifically to Grief Karga, aka the director of next week's chapter. Next week's episode is going to be directed by Carl Weathers himself. Where's Tobias Fuke to participate in this?
Holy cow. Who's going to win the puck then? We've had a lot of great directors and interesting directors. Who is your favorite director for a Mandalorian episode, Bubba? Please present it.
Well, let's talk about it. We've certainly had Dave Filoni from the Clone Wars. He directed the very first episode ever of The Mandalorian, the one which introduced this world, so you would have to give him a bit of respect. The creator of the series, Jon Favreau, he directed the first episode of Season 2, Chapter 9, The Marshal, with the Krayt Dragon battle. You'd think he would get some votes. You would have some for this week's director. So many people say this episode was the best. It was directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, Ron Howard's daughter. She directed this one, and from Season 1, she directed the episode which introduced Cara Dune on the forest world, where Mando had a little flirting with the school marm, Omera. I think some people would even nominate Deborah Chow because she's going to be doing the Obi-Wan series, and in Season 1, she directed a lot of episodes like the Episode 3 of Season 1, The Sin, which featured the great battle where all the Mandalorians came out of the covert to save Mando. She also directed the 7th episode, which saw the end of Kuil Ugnulti. And so there are a lot of good options. I'm going to go, now we haven't seen Grief Karga yet, we haven't seen Carl Weathers yet, but I'm going to go completely off the board and talk about Rick. I'm just going to call him Rick. His name is actually Rick Famuyiwa, I believe is how it's pronounced. He directed, from Season 1, he directed the second episode, which featured the battle with the Mudhorn to get the egg and Mando chasing down a sandcrawler. And he also, in Season 1, directed Chapter 6, The Prisoner, which was a total standalone episode, but I thought it was a really fun one where Mando joined the motley crew trying to break the prisoner out of the prison ship. And so why do I like Rick, whose last name I have trouble pronouncing? Mainly because I find he does action so well. I mentioned it a second ago. The Mando chasing down the sandcrawler still may be my favorite action moment in all of this. And in the prison break episode, we were talking about Mando fighting hand-to-hand.
That's a great one.
Hand-to-hand earlier. When Mando, the bad guys in Mando, they're behind these droids which are patrolling the prison ship, and Mando has to slide underneath them and take out a bunch of droids. Or when Mando is trapped in a prison cell, he has to pull a droid over and dismantle it so he can free himself from the cell. Those are some great action beats. I haven't even mentioned, hell, in the prison episode, Mando is fighting the alien with the 2 devil horns, and the blast doors close on him, and you think, oh, okay, he's gone. But then suddenly he lifts open the doors, and you think, oh my God, this alien is so powerful, he's going to lift open the blast doors. And then a second set of blast doors come and shut on him. That action is the best. So both of his episodes feel very standalone-ish, and that part is rough, but the fact that he's made them so enjoyable, and somebody like me who loves the story so much that I've still enjoyed him, I'm going to give it up to Rick Famuyiwa, who, for me, is the best director until we see Grief next week. Do the magic hand thing, directing Grief. So that's my choice. Catfish, who you got?
Wow. This is pretty amazing, I have to say. This is super, super tough for me. Now, you never know... You never know what's going on as far as a director goes. I mean, I have worked on shows with directors who weren't well known, who actually got to do a lot of the work. I've also worked on shows where there are great, very well known directors who are not doing as much.
Okay.
Only because, and this has got nothing to do with how good they are. This is just the way a show works. So, when you have something, we've heard a lot about Disney sort of really being in control of the Star Wars movies, etc. Right. They've pushed some people out of the way.
A couple of people, yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm not sure exactly how much power these directors have. Like I said, I've been on some sets where it's clearly that the producers, the showrunners are kind of running things for the most part. I will say I've been very impressed with the directing of this series so far. I would think that Bryce Dallas Howard is a very strong case. I thought this episode was exceedingly well done. Episode 4 last year, also well done. I like what you have to say about that Prison Break episode, was very exciting. I thought the episode directed by Taika Waititi was funny and very well done. So I'm going to have to go with Carl Weathers.
You mean you haven't even seen it yet? You're giving it to Carl Weathers?
I'm giving it to Carl Weathers. Listen, if you have a beef, take it up with grief. And I'm not going to beef with grief. So I'm giving it to Carl Weathers, best director of this show. And that's saying a lot because there have been some great episodes that were directed by great directors and some shows that were directed by maybe some less well-known directors that ended up being amazing. So it has to be Carl Weathers.
Catfish. Let me say this. I made my argument, but I hope you're right because I want next week to be another great episode.
I hope so. I hope so too. I'm still baffled by the idea that this show, which is, as we all know, it's been kind of like the original Star Wars. The idea is it's a Western set in space, that somehow this is going to become a complex show like Game of Thrones. But I'm up for it.
And when you think Game of Thrones, you think Carl Weathers.
Absolutely. I think Carl Weathers.
Listeners, write to us. Tell us who you have enjoyed in the director's chair the most so far. At PHQ on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook.com/PHQ, YouTube comments. Anyway, let us know. We love hearing from you. Catfish, we're going to end this episode of Parsec Passion the way we end every episode of Parsec Passion. That's with our good grief. Something that really excites us either in an episode, the series, Star Wars as a whole, anything and everything. What is your good grief for this week?
Well, I'm going to kind of repeat myself, and my good grief is about this show. It is that, well, two things really. One is that the idea that they will open this up and it will still be kind of a fun run and gun show, but it will open up the world in a way that I'll be completely excited about, that they'll bring in things that Star Wars fans know, but also that people who aren't fanatics know. But I'm also glad this week that the recount is not going to help Moff Gideon reclaim power.
Long live the Empire.
Yeah. What about you, Bubba? What is your good grief of the week?
My good grief, listeners, is that on the 17th of November, a.k.a. just a day after you receive this podcast, Tuesday, November 17th, 2020, Disney Plus is going to celebrate Star Wars Life Day with the Star Wars Lego Holiday Special. I imagine that's going to be hilarious. Catfish and I are going to watch it and give our thoughts to you. The Lego shorts in the Lego films always make me laugh with their meta humor, with their good-natured ribbing of things we love. And to go back to Life Day in the original Star Wars Holiday Special and to bring it all back, I can only imagine all the great stuff we're going to have to talk about with you guys next week. It's exciting for me.
My God, you know what, Bubba? I just thought about this now. I'm pretty sure the 17th is the first day I start paying. I'm sure this is going to be hilarious, but also it's clearly part of Disney's evil plan to make me subscribe after my free trial's up.
Those bastards. That evil mouse. That evil mouse.
So smart.
For everybody here on the Parsec Passion podcast, my name's Bubba. Tweet at me if you disagree with any of my silly ideas at FitandTrim. That's FITTENTRIM at FitandTrim on Twitter.
And I am Catfish. You can hit me up at CJGman67. If you agree that I am totally crushing all my opinions, both this season and last season, you can hit me up. But also, don't forget to hit up at FitandTrim as well, and our mothership at PHQ. Yeah. But then you will hear more of my amazingly correct opinions on next week's episode of
Parsec Passion.
Pew, 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 pew.
All right, Mando, I will end the podcast, but I need you to do a couple of things for me. The garage door sticks. I got some cracks in my foundation.
Sure. I'll fix the cracks in the foundation. But then also, that was not the deal.
Pray I don't alter it further. All right, guys, we'll see you next week.